Hello, how are you, Lawrence?
Hi, Laurie. Yes, back for another episode of Where Are We? What is it?
Yeah. Do we live in a
Um,
construct? That's the title of this one, and I'm calling it episode 2 because we already talked about do we live in a construct a week ago. And so we're going to continue along this line. And maybe not. John Walicki will join us in a little while, and maybe Philippe again. And we'll see. I sent them links. So we'll wait and see if that happens. If not, I've got a couple things I would like to talk about, and you've got a couple things you would like to talk about. So I want to start off with the seals, the cylinder seals. I happened upon this the other day, and I made a post about it in our Facebook group. And over the last 3.5 years, we've been hearing about different biblical scripture that people have used to say the Bible says the earth is flat, fixed, not moving, so on. And there's been quite a few different, I'm going to get a link up here. There's been quite a few different, I believe that one is right. Screen, I'm going to do a screen share to show what I'm talking about. Okay, this is called a cylinder seal. And a cylinder seal is a small round cylinder, typically about 1 inch, 2 to 3 centimeters in length, engraved with written characters or figurative scenes, or both, used in ancient times to roll an impression onto a two-dimensional surface, generally wet clay. Now, I'm going to change here. Stop. And I'm going to go to images. And I'm going to share. And these are cylinder seals. And cylinder seals, this is a round cylinder, kind of like a rolling pin. And when you roll them across the wet clay, the damp clay, the image is carved into the cylinder. And so it leaves a bas relief impression on the clay. And so what is carved out is now raised on the surface, and the flat part flattens out the clay. And however long a piece of clay and however many times you want to roll the cylinder seal will repeat the pattern over and over and over again. So when people talk about, let me stop. When people talk about this one particular scripture, and it's Job 38:14. And I will read the King James Version first. It is turned as clay to the seal, and they stand as a garment. The NIV says, the earth takes shape like clay under a seal. Its features stand out like those of a garment. And this is where God is describing to Job how he made the earth. Job was questioning, how did you make this? And it says, the earth takes shape like clay under a seal. Its hills stand out like the folds of a garment. And so people have been using the idea of the round seal, the seal that is like a signet ring that you stamp into wax to seal a letter, to seal an envelope, to seal a scroll, so that if the seal is unbroken, then the person who gets it delivered to them knows that it hasn't been read. It's directly from the sender. If the seal has been broken, then that means somebody broke it and read it. But those were always round seals. And so people grabbed onto that because that's the image they had in their head when they think of a seal, because the word cylinder is not there. And so in the Bible, God didn't say the word cylinder in whatever Hebrew, Greek language he was talking to Job. So this has been used over and over to say that, the AE map is right. The earth is a circle. The earth is round. Even look how when you stamp the seal, round seal, into the wax, the outside edges are all gushed up like higher. And that represents the ice ring, the ice wall, so on and so on. So I challenge anyone who has used this image in their mind of this round seal to consider the cylinder seal as what God was talking about, because he said the word clay. Now, people didn't seal letters and scrolls and whatever with wet clay and put a round seal in it and then have to sit there and go waiting for the clay to harden, because wax hardens immediately, which is why they used wax. But God said clay. So clay was used with cylinder seals, and you can look up cylinder seals. There's people who've done videos of Sumerian and Mesopotamian cylinder seals. There's tons of them that have been found. So it's not like it was a rare thing. It was a pretty normally used thing. And the purpose of it was to paint a picture, a story. And you have said on numerous occasions in Hangouts that we've done that even Google Earth used to have the repeating Earth cylinder seal concept when you zoomed out. And then suddenly, once we started talking about that, it seems, they changed it to when you zoom out from Google Earth, you get the globe. And so, but before, that's how they had it, which was a repeating wallpaper. Now, does that say that the Earth is square? No. Does that say Pac-Man? Lean in there. It's a repeat pattern. And when you take the cylinder seal and you roll it over the wet clay, you get a raised relief like mountains, valleys, impressions. So is it flat? Darn sure it's flat when you roll it out, right? And so what was your impression when you read me talking in the post on Facebook, when you got it right away, what it meant to you? What does it explain?
Yeah, well, imagine you were doing some baking and you got a big long strip of pastry and you want to put an imprint on it. You would just get your rolling pin with indents in it like a cylinder seal, and you just roll it out for as long as you wanted to, and you'd have the same pattern all along it. And when you mentioned the Bible, that it was being described to, who was it?
Job.
To Job. When it was being described to Job, God was telling Job in terms that were relevant to, civilization at that time. That would be something that he would understand. It makes complete sense, and it probably explains why Google have pulled the repeating wallpaper Earth effect from all their Google Maps, because I was looking at lots of them and I was always zooming out just to check, and recently I zoomed out and it's come up with the globe, as though this was some kind of smashing brand new technology that they've just discovered. But they've had this technology for a very long time. It's not something they just thought of. It's something they've put out there because they don't want to leave that message out there. Truth hidden in plain sight. They made a mistake and they decided to take it away so that it does zoom out to the globe. So yeah, it makes perfect sense. You know, and obviously when you did that, that led me to start thinking about time, and that's another whole box of frogs. But it makes perfect sense to me. If anybody wants to debunk it when we cover it later, then you know, tell me about it. But it makes sense to me. And I'll just press this button, otherwise my screen will turn off. You know, I think we don't just have one sun, because all of those Earths on the wallpaper effect, they go on indefinitely, and they've all got all of us on, and they've all got a sun that's passing across it, and how all that fits together. You mentioned the words omnipotent, omnipresent. I had to look up those words, actually. It's not words that I use, but yeah, that makes sense. You know, God is everywhere at any one time, but you know, so, and it's like this thing when you see about when they deal with atoms, and they can be in several places, 3,000 places all at the same time in different places. Well, you know, that doesn't make sense according to conventional science, but it would if you were comparing it to the Earth in a simulation. And like we're talking now, where, you know, 4,500 miles apart, yet it's instantaneous. And you were saying earlier that, you know, the message has got to go down all these wires, through all these charging stations, through servers and whatever, and it all gets there in a split nanosecond. I never got to ask you what, you know, I know we're saying we're in the machine. We are all in the machine. But if it's not the internet, and it isn't physically all these getting, because if you pull the wire out, it ain't going to get there. But so what do you think it is? Expand on that.
Well, we were talking about, you know, time travel a little bit before, and you know, it's such a long thought about thing. Movies, television shows, comic books, anything sci-fi has been talking about time travel for decades and decades. And, you know, some people believe that we already have the technology to time travel. Well, you know, what is time travel? In a sense, you and I are time traveling right now, but yet we're not. So it's kind of a paradox, meaning I'm 5 hours away from you. You're ahead of me 5 hours, right now. And yeah, you just said you're in my voice, you're in my image, are being beamed back and forth via a connection called Google Hangouts on YouTube, at split nanoseconds to make this video, for example. And I say something, you say something, I say something, you say something, and we're supposed to believe. It's really kind of comical. It's kind of sci-fi. We're supposed to believe that my voice and my image zoomed across the channel, and yours back to me, and then someone will say, well, that's not the way it's happening. It's, you know, you're being beamed to Google Hangouts, he's being beamed to Google Hangouts, and it's being managed in the middle. Okay, I'll even go with that. But we're talking, you know, seconds, or I mean, hundreds of seconds for this all to work together immediately at the same time, whether we're being video broadcast or not. It's the same thing with the telephone. It's the same thing, you know, with any electronic device where you're communicating with somebody on the other side of Earth. And so the idea in my mind is, if you equate that same concept to synapses in your brain, okay, you know, we talked last week about pain, for example, and I can now say unequivocally that you and I can communicate back and forth across 5 hours of time zones faster than I can stub my toe and know ahead of time that I've stubbed, know right then I've stubbed my toe, but the actual pain doesn't hit my brain for, a second, almost a second. We're communicating faster than my own nerve endings can send a message to my brain and back to my toe to say, damn, that hurt. Okay.
Yeah.
And, we said the same thing about, cutting your finger. You're chopping vegetables and you're moving right along. And then you cut your finger and even before the blood starts to come out, even before the pain hits your brain, what just happened here? And yet you're waiting for the to hit your brain that your finger hurts because you cut it. So these are nanoseconds of time that all of this is happening. And we're supposed to believe that the same thing is happening with me speaking and you speaking back and forth across 4,000 miles through fiber optic cable and cell tower repeaters and Google Hangouts and the internet and whatever. Okay. So put all of those into the same box. The pain receptors of the neural links between your toe and your brain, and those fiber optic cables that are supposed to be moving milliseconds of gigabytes of information, blah, blah, connecting from one cable to another tower to another, from me to you. We're in the machine. That's the construct. That's what God was describing to Job. The construct is constantly being rolled out like a cylinder seal on clay. Go ahead.
So the gist of this is that we could be talking about another hoax, in that the internet isn't what we're told it is. It's something wholly different.
Possibly. I mean, I've seen the fiber optic cables. I've seen the maps that they use to show us about all of these fiber optic cables that are laid from France to England and from England to the United States and back across and over to Asia, and then across landlines and cell repeater towers and so on, and servers. That's what the internet is, isn't it? It's just moving information from one server to the other server, and all these servers are connected, just like your brain. All right? And so it's the same thing with your computer. If you have a air-gapped computer, meaning it is not hooked up to the internet at that moment, let's just say you're using your home computer, your desktop, and you pull the plug to the internet. Now, believe it or not, computers still work when there's no internet connection. We've all had them plugged in automatically for so long that we kind of think that it won't work without the internet, but it will. And so inside that machine, if everything's running properly, there's no malware, there's, all of your updates are in there, and all your programs are running properly, and you've done your C cleaner and the blah, blah, and you've got maximum speed, RAM, and with the whole 9 yards, maximum quality machine. You can click back and forth, boom, 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 open stuff. You hear all the little clicks clicking inside your computer. Every once in a while, if you're really moving too fast, the little fan comes on to cool it down. But if it's air gapped and it's not on the internet, it runs faster than plugging in your internet connection, signing on to Google, opening a browser, searching the web, going on Facebook, going to your email, all those things. If your computer's running at optimum speed, you can click back and forth pretty quick, internet or no internet. But my point is the computer itself, and, please, I am not saying we live inside of a computer. It's much broader than that. I am using a similar analogy, just like God used with Job, with the clay seal, because it was something he could relate to. It was something simple that he could understand. And he was able to get a visual image in his head of what God was explaining. That's what parables and analogies are for. But is it a construct? Is what we're searching? Is what we're researching? And if you can, entertain an idea that a construct is not the same as a computer, a simulation is not the same as AI, virtual reality. These are words that we're having to use because there's no other words yet. We're going to have to make I keep saying we're going to have to make words up. And, I've started using the word construct instead of simulation theory or whatever, because in my opinion, it's already been bastardized and people already have an opinion of what they think simulation means. Now let's go back to time again. Okay. So you made a post in the Facebook group about time travel, and you said, you say what you said about the speed of light, the speed of the sun. Which speed are we talking about? What is time based on? And and I know, and everybody else knows, I hope, that time is a man-made construct. Time has been figured out for, the benefit of everyone so that we can manage a system better. Time zones, 24 hours around the world, across the world, however you want to, think of it. So time broken down into days, minutes, days, hours, minutes, seconds, nanoseconds now, is a construct that man invented to simplify things so everybody's working on the same page. So you said if you could move through time zones faster than the sun is traveling across those time zones, and we know based on a 24,901 mile circumference around the globe or across Earth, or wherever you want to measure it, that's the measurement we go by. That's broken down into 24 time zones, 24 hours a day. And that is a construct. Okay, take it from there. Okay. Hi, John. Thank you for joining us. You just jumped in and you were so kind to mute yourself. How are you?
Doing good. A-okay. How's everybody doing?
Awesome. We're just starting to talk about what we wanted you to be in on. So
I heard time travel there at the end.
Time travel.
How long have you been talking about time travel?
Just a few minutes. I mean, we've been kind of back and forth, and where we started was talking about the internet and the speed in which you, me, and Lawrence right now are communicating and filming and so on, so-called using fiber optic cables and nanoseconds of speed and speed of light and so on. And we are investigating time travel based on what exactly is time, because right now we're all in the right now.
Moment. I just caught the last of what you were saying, and I have here my time questions. Okay, here's the ultimate question. I've got three questions. The first one is, where does time exist? Where does time exist?
Okay.
The second question is, Where is the evidence of time? Now, the last question. Where is the experience of time?
Okay.
So
Very good questions.
these I have an answer for all of them. It's in the
Okay.
mind. As you were saying, it's a construct. We don't experience time. We experience we're basically dumb apes that count. We count, and so we count so many things. I mean, if you took a rake, right? If you fashioned a rake, you know, these two different prongs, they're the same distance. You can draw graphs and grids in the sand and everything, and it's all equal. But time is in the now. Time is in the now. The now,
Right.
now. There's only now,
Now,
as you
now,
were
now,
saying.
now. Right.
Right.
Exactly.
There's
Oh,
other
Okay.
nows,
So let Lawrence make this little presentation
Yeah,
that he's
sure.
been thinking about,
John,
and then we're going to go from there.
John, and Laurie. Okay, so you've got my little screen share here. So this, what I've got here is how Google used to zoom out to. It didn't have the days and the sun on it like that, but they used to zoom out to a wallpaper effect of a Mercator type map. When you zoomed out from, you might be looking at the Eiffel Tower or Niagara Falls, just kept zooming out. That's what you'd end up with. And I pointed this out several years ago and saying, well, that's probably the truth in plain sight, because when the sun goes out, goes from east to west, and apparently comes back the other side. Well, maybe it doesn't. Maybe there's just a series of suns all exactly one Earth distance apart, and they're just all moving in. Maybe they are circling in some way, or finding their way back to the start. But let's imagine this, John, Laurie. Right? It's Monday. Okay, Monday, and you're both in Africa. Yeah, John, you're in Africa with Laurie.
Okay, I'm there in Africa.
All right. We've got this jet plane that Star Hills on our Facebook channel was telling us it does. It travels twice the speed of the sun, which is very convenient, but it does. Okay, and you're level with the sun. It's over Africa. You're at an airport in Africa. Now, when you take off in this plane, it doesn't need any fuel. As we know, planes do not use fuel. They just use, they just use the wind that flies into the engines, compresses it, and it's a self-fulfilling, perpetual motion machine. So you can stay up in the air as long as you like. Now, you and Laurie are in this plane. You can swap, you can fly it for a bit, then Laurie can. You just got to keep an eye on all the switches and the controls. And you're going to stay up in the air for 2 days. Okay. So the sun is over Africa on this little image here, and it's Monday, and it's going from east to west. 2 days later, the sun is going to be over Wednesday, but you're traveling at twice the speed of the sun. So you're going to be over the Earth that's on Friday. You're going to be 2 days ahead of the sun. The sun's still going to be there, but it's not the same sun. It's just an identical sun that's over each individual, Earth on this wallpaper effect, the same as what it would be if you caught earlier, John. God was describing to Job how he made the earth, and he described it as one of these cylindrical stiff seals, which is a bit like a rolling pin, where if you rolled it out over some clay, you'd get the pattern repeating. So you being Friday, okay? You being Friday, but the sun that you were under originally is only in Wednesday. You're going to be 2 days ahead of that sun. So you'll be 2 days ahead. Now let's imagine that, the powers that be have had the technology to travel more than the speed of sound for some time, and they can stay up in the air as long as they'd like. They would be able to travel into the future, gather financial information on the stock markets and all sorts of other things, and then they could fly back the other way till they got back to the time that they left and use that information to corner the market. Now, I'm not saying this was happening hundreds of years ago, but we know that Rothschild, according to the history books at least, the alternative history books, what Rothschild did, and they put it down to fast ships, But he reported he got advanced knowledge that that England had beaten France in the Napoleonic Wars. Um, but the story was put out that France had beaten England, and so all the government bonds in England all crashed. They were worth pennies in the pound, and Rothschild bought them all up at pennies in the pound. When the truth became known that England had won the war, the bonds went back and beyond their initial value, and he made, in today's money, he made billions of pounds. And they could well be doing the same stuff today because they say these stock market crashes are engineered. Well, I think they probably know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen if they can travel in time.
What's the age old? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what's the age old adage? Money makes the world go round.
Yeah. And if you went the other way, if you flew east for 2 days on Monday, you'd end up on the previous Saturday. Sorry, you'd for 2 days. The sun would be going one way. You'd be going back in time anyway if you're going twice the speed of the sun. So you could go back in time and change things.
Okay, let me interject something real quick. You're talking about the physical sun, not to be confused and not to be compared to time travel across time zones, which is the man-made construct. We didn't construct the sun, and we can't manage how fast it moves. But what I'm saying
moves in the sky.
Okay. In the construct.
Well, I mean, like, what is the reference that Lawrence is talking about? Is it your reference, like seeing it in the sky, where you would normally see it, or are you? Because if you're talking about being in, here's my one thing. They might be already doing it. I mean, if they put rockets up into orbit, they're technically going way faster than the speed of sound, and whether they go up and come down and wherever, whatever happens, they certainly have the potential to do what you're saying in an extraordinary amount of time.
All right, but okay,
to take surveillance.
I hear you,
and then drop down in the ocean and be retrieved.
Okay, now what Lawrence is talking about is stock market type manipulation, for example.
It's all the military, financial, industrial, congressional complex.
Okay. So if, for example, when you go across the Bering Strait international date line that goes right between Russia and Alaska, it has a little jig jog there, but across that 55 miles between Alaska and Russia, there is a different day, literally, okay, because of the time zones. That's where you go over into the next day. I've always questioned, is that one of the reasons why they've never actually built a road across there, a bridge, a highway? They say it's, an insurmountable amount of money to do it, blah, blah. Of course, one war would pay for it, but regardless. But the idea is, if you were in a boat in the ocean at the international date line and your friend was in another boat facing you, you're going to do some FaceTime across the international date line. You are literally talking to a person who lives in the next day according to the construct of time. Okay, and time zones. But you're like, hello, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. Back at you. But you literally, if between the two boats is the IDL, you're in different days talking to each other, right?
Yeah. And each of those days has got a time zone. So you've got on that depiction I've got Monday through to Saturday. They've all got their own time zones, and obviously they do that because of night and day, so they don't want, they couldn't have the same time for everybody because, people will be getting up in the dark in some places and sunshine in others. So presumably,
there's also a there's also a collection of islands that, you know, it just makes sense for, you know, transportation and commerce just to have everything all lined up. I mean, what is it? There's the Maldives. There's oh God, what's above New Zealand? But you know what I'm talking about, where the
Right.
time zone goes all jagged.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
looks
I
like the
would
Cape Cod.
totally get you.
Yeah,
All of us are on the same page.
I mean,
Now we
it's
just need to make sure that
multifaceted.
we're talking about the same thing. Time to an individual is right now. Doesn't matter what time zone you're in, wouldn't matter. If you woke up in a padded cell with no window, okay, and you've been in there for a month and there's no outside light, you would have no idea what day, what time, what hour it is, because you have no reference. Unless, of course, you've been sitting there ticking off time on the wall with your little pen, right? But then you couldn't, but you couldn't sleep, because if you slept, you wouldn't know how long you slept.
Sorry,
So
you know what time?
lost track of
I know
time.
what time it was from the bowel movements. That
Oh,
tells you what
well,
time of day it is.
okay,
Was it
maybe,
every 6
but
hours,
not
depending on what
everybody's
you
so
eat?
regular.
You know, but yeah, I mean, and
Leave
then
it
you're
to you,
talking about like,
Lawrence. Okay.
so you're talking about the seal. Well, obviously, if you roll the seal over wet clay, there's probably between each pattern, there's probably some little line or something, which is maybe that line between Russia and Canada at the top. Maybe there is something on that bit which is, a bit strange that they don't
Well,
want
if
to
you
say.
were, yeah, if you were printing, then you would have registration marks. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
way it is. If
You
you're to
just
print,
said the magic word, printing. Doesn't that little cylinder rolling pin look like the first printing press? You
yes, it
put a
does.
little ink on it and you roll
Yeah.
it on some papyrus like this, and
Sure.
there,
And
boom,
however long a piece of papyrus you have, okay. Now
propaganda.
this brings me back to probably 3.5 years ago worth of hangouts, when we were talking about the Mobius strip and the what's that jar that has it's a glass jar that
Klein jar, is it?
Yeah,
Klein bottle.
Klein
Okay.
bottle. Yep.
All right. So remember when we were talking about, that whole thing years ago? I mean, we've been so all around this topic, this concept for so long, that it took us this long to disqualify this, disqualify that. The true scientific method, process of elimination, debunking, so on and so on. And the minute, though, that we hit on the Pac-Man concept, okay, which got the laughing stock of flat Earth for however many months. I mean, still to this day, there
But the
are
most
people.
views.
Yeah, there's people in these threads that I go on in these groups and stuff that, oh no, you're not going to go Pac-Man on me, are you? And so you're
Waka
like,
waka.
waka waka, whatever, dude. It all leads back to something. And so the idea is, Lawrence just described the ability to time travel via man's own time construct system, right? You're not really traveling in any time, because all time is right now for everyone. Okay.
I think that's important to say. Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. He's speaking about a way of physically moving in our time referenced zones and
Right.
accomplishing something, which I think is very valid. And honestly, I think it's been happening for a long time.
Most
If I can
likely.
use the word time.
But of course,
Right.
there's no way you could not use the word time when you're discussing time.
Well,
right?
you also said something else, and it's you can't put yourself in. Okay, we're experiencing the now right now, but when we have a memory, we can't go back and experience that as a now. You know, they perhaps in our dreams, and perhaps some of us do. It might be impossible for some. I don't know. From the guru, from some of the gurus, they say you're not you in your dreams. But I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I say you sometimes you are, sometimes you're not. The first thing I did in the long I'd never done. I saw a mirror in my dream recently. However, it was broken and I couldn't see anything in it. I don't know what that means, but
Well,
I did see a mirror. I have not seen the moon or the sun or anything like you've said, though.
okay, now let me jump in here with dreams.
Please.
When you're in your conscious mind, awake, okay, you can be daydreaming, but you're not in REM sleep dreaming, okay? They cannot happen simultaneously. So you're either in your subconscious mind or you're in your conscious mind, okay? So when you're in your, it's still the same mind. It's still coming from the same source, your brain, okay? You feel, you get the feels from things that happen in your dreams. You wake up from a lucid dream. I just had one the other night where I was having a lucid dream that someone walked by the side yard of my house, and I looked out the window and they were dragging tree limbs and trunks. And I freaked out in my dream. I mean, I literally got adrenaline in my dream, okay? Freaking out, ran out of the house, looked out, and my entire backyard giant trees, things that I've been nurturing for years were clear cut, gone, all gone. Lucidly seeing the vision in my head of no trees, okay? And all the feelings that came up from that, anger, hatred, not having had control over somebody coming on my property and cutting down all these trees that I've been growing for years, right? Now, I had the feels that went with all the emotions that went with the visualizations of the dream. Now I wake up. I literally have to get up right now out of the bed and go look out and make sure that there's trees out there. That did not happen. That's how lucid it was. Okay. So my point that I'm making is conscious versus subconscious. All the feels happen in the subconscious the same as they happen in the conscious. So if you can't be in two places at one time. While you're in the dream, that's where your conscious is, even though your subconscious is playing the movie. Okay. So as far as having to be in the now, no matter when, you asked in the question, when and there's only now. Okay. Right. Now, that's on a one-on-one individual person basis. Now, what Lawrence is talking about is manipulating the time construct and not time itself, right?
I don't think he's manipulating the construct. I think he's
the time construct that man-made time construct.
Okay.
Well, because if you look at mainstream science, if you go on and look at time travel, you'll get the likes of Brian Cox saying, time travel's possible, but you've got to fly close to the speed of light. And maybe that they're obliged to tell you the truth. Well, we know the speed of light may well be instantaneous. It's, it doesn't have a speed. But when they're talking about the speed of light, they could be talking about the light in the sky, the sun. If you can travel at the speed of the sun or faster, then maybe you can travel in time. And, I think they probably have. I'm pretty sure they have.
Well, there you go. Brian Cox is manipulating minds by using the idea of if you can move faster than the speed of light. Okay, what's the speed of light? Blah, 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 but this quotient and this mathematical equation, yada, yada, bullshit. Okay, it's bullshit. You can only measure perceiving the light. Okay, it's like how many times when you were a kid and you went to bed and you were scared of the dark. We all went through those episodes as children. And I remember standing at the doorway, which was the only light switch to the room. All right. We didn't have bedside lamps. You had an overhead light. Standing at the doorway with my hand on the light switch. Okay. And I'm going to try to beat the light, beat the darkness to jump in my bed by. I had a very vivid imagination as a child. Flip the light and fly across the room and jump in the bed, which was the farthest bed. I shared a room with my sister, and I want to land in that bed before the monster under the bed grabs my feet. Okay, that's the
You just have to be faster than your sister.
And so, okay, so there's a show that's on Netflix right now. It's been on for a couple of years. I think we're in season 3 or something of a show. It's called Travelers. Have either of you guys seen it?
No.
Okay. The concept of the show is that these people from the future who are controlled by an AI, the future is so shitty that they come back to the 21st century to try to change some events, hoping that it will change the future for the people that are still in the future. And it is so awful. There was like a nuclear event, one of those kind that, block the sun and, maybe one little ray of light still comes. They have to live in a dome building structure, blah, blah. Okay. So they transfer consciousnesses from the future, not people, consciousnesses from the future, like my mind, my persona, jumps into a body 1 millisecond before it dies here on Earth. I mean, here in the 21st century. That's the concept. And then these travelers get missions from this AI computer in the future of events that are supposed to happen now and now and now, and try to stop them or prevent them or alter in some way without killing anyone, all kinds of rules. Right.
Prime directive type stuff.
Yeah. Protocol 3, Protocol 1, all that kind of talk. Okay. So
that's fascinating.
It is actually a fairly well done show. You can't find many problems with their acting out the concept. It's done fairly well, and I would recommend it to anyone who likes to think about time travel.
Huh.
And so the idea, though, is we all know they always. I mean, how many movies have been made about and TV shows have been made about time travel over and books about over, our lifetimes. And the one directive is always, if someone dies, you have no idea what the ripple effect of them being taken out of the equation will be toward the future. So when you go to the past and you alter things, well, in this very show, there was, let's say, a nuclear bomb that was going to go off, and it was going to kill potentially 50,000 people. And in the future, it happened. So these people's mission is to prevent that from happening. Okay. So now you just saved 50,000 people's lives. Talk about future altering, right? And another example, a kid is starting out with that weirdness of killing creatures and, eating parts and stuff that's eventually turns into killing humans and eating eyeballs and Jeffrey Dahmer. Okay. So a little psychopath in the making. So the idea is this kid needs to be killed before he kills all these other people, because somebody he's going to kill is important in the future. Okay. And so, but during the directive, the mission, one of the guys shows this kid some kindness, alters him in some way to where he doesn't end up being the psycho killer later. So he gets to live. Got me? In other words, every action has an equal and opposite reaction in the future. So
I'm thinking of Looper right now.
All right. So if Lawrence is talking about time traveling for the manipulation of, let's say, stock market, or, is this how Rothschild got to be a trillionaire? His wealth is so underestimated by their family's wealth. And there's wealthier families, I think, than that we've never heard of. I think Rothschild is just the drop name for the one we're supposed to hate the most, the rich sons of bitches. Okay. So how does that affect the rest of us? If we all have monopoly money, if all money is fake, and every country that has central banks and so on, money in itself, we know, is fake. Now, whether or not you print it out of thin air like we do, and truly is monopoly money, is one thing.
Not we.
In the day, back in the not us, those guys.
We don't do that. No.
But back in the day, originally money was, if notes, fiat currency of some kind was created by, I bring my sack of gold, you give me some chits to spend out there so that I don't have to carry my sack of gold around. And those chits are immediately can be taken to the depository and redeemed for the actual gold. So that was actually a standard, right? And so we know that that's not the case anymore, not in the submatrix, at least. Okay, go back to your questions again, John.
No, you got me thinking about TV shows, and I've been recently watching an interesting thing on Stars or Showtime. It's called Counterpart, where a gentleman works for a government bureau in Berlin, and he discovers that there's a doorway that leads to a staircase that goes, down under Berlin, and then it reaches a bottom, then it comes back up to another doorway, and it basically opens into the exact same world, but with everybody. It's basically a replica world where everyone else exists, and in other, there's a different history happened right after.
We're losing you.
Right after the war. Yeah. Oh, sorry. You hear me?
Yeah.
Hello.
You're buffering.
Oh yeah, you're buffering too.
That's hilarious.
Okay, let's go back to time. You wanted to know the questions.
Okay, John. John.
Yeah.
We didn't get any of that. You were buffering.
That's cool.
You might need to get out and come back in, because we lost all that. You was just buffering. Okay.
You got it.
Sorry. We'll try it. We'll try that again. All right, Lawrence. So in your time travel estimation, using this speed thing, going in the opposite direction of the sun, so I guess it would, by time zone representation, if you were going east to west versus west to east, Now you did a future one. Okay. You did a future time travel by going east, starting in the east and going west, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Does the same thing apply to you then going in reverse?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So you're in the past? Are
Yeah.
you, because if you're going by where the sun is actually traveling, then you would actually, if you're going the other direction, you would catch up to the sun coming in the next.
From the previous day.
That's difficult to comprehend,
Well,
right?
it is. It's one of those things where it doesn't take but a second before you lose
Yeah, you gotta
lose the
sit with
thread.
it.
You really gotta bear down. Okay, so
Yeah. If you
all
go,
right,
Eyes
so
are
now
going
we're
up. I'm
going-
trying to visualize. You know?
Okay, so now we're going backwards. We're
and they do
going.
tell you, don't they? I mean, do you remember the Star Trek called the Voyage Home? I think it was called, where they had to travel back in time to get some whales and bring
Right.
No,
them
but I
back to the
bet my
future.
friend Nanny Inez has seen it 1,000 times. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, and how did they manage to travel backwards in time there? They did a slingshot around the sun. So they were certainly involving the sun with that. And
Just
maybe
like Superman.
because the
Yep,
movies have to tell you
Superman.
everything. Again, Superman, went whiz, 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 whiz around the earth and great to spin in reverse to reverse time. So he could save Lewis Lane from falling down in the earthquake or whatever it was. So,
Well, in this
know.
time travel travelers show that I was just talking about, spoiler alert, pass here if you haven't seen this yet, because just turn it off and catch up in a minute, okay? Because I'm going to tell the end of season 3 here. At the end of season 3, the AI in the future realizes that they failed. The entire concept of coming back to the 21st century and trying to stop this and this and this from happening fails in the future. So they do a reset. You'll like that part. How many times have we talked about reset lately? So they did a reset, and literally came up on the computer screen. Protocol 1 failed. Begin protocol 2, or whatever they were calling it. Okay. And the people, they had to pick one guy who was going to be the guy who was going to be number 1 for the new reset. So he had to pick a time and a memory that he had here on Earth in the 21st century. He was already a jumper. He was already a traveler, and start there. And he picked like 17 years ago that he first came here and started again. Well, now all the people that just got killed off in episode 3 are all alive again, and we get to start over. Okay. So now you're thinking, okay, what did they affect then? If they started at the beginning of where they started mucking around with things, now they're going to give it another reset try. And, it's kind of like, how many times have we heard about resets lately, talking about, the whole construct, simulation, mud floods, Mandela effects, all of it.
Yeah, I mean, because when you look at time travel, you look at the so-called Philadelphia experiment, Montauk Project, Doctor Who and the TARDIS, and they all very and the movie The Time Machine, where he has an actual machine that spins. He sits in this thing and it spins and takes him, into the past. Well, maybe it's all rather simple, and it's just simply flying faster than the sun, and that's all it is. I mean, they do tell you in the movies. They're obliged to tell you what's possible in the movies. Like, if you remember, watch Back to the Future, where Marty went to the future and he brought back some sports magazine, and Biff, the big burly character, the guy who got covered in horse shit, he got hold of this sports magazine which had got all the football results, and he put money on it because he knew what the results were going to be, and became very wealthy.
Yeah, but that movie doesn't work. because how could he come back to the future and leave the DeLorean from the Marty in the future to take the DeLorean back to the past?
Well, you better
It doesn't
explain that,
work.
John.
No, it's a big conundrum. It never
There's
works.
another one of those
Doesn't
conundrums.
work. Doesn't work.
Yeah,
He
all
couldn't
right,
come back to the same time and go, okay,
Well,
here's your
okay,
DeLorean back.
but
I
here's
just
what
changed the whole.
all right.
here's
Listen.
what Lawrence
listen.
is talking about. Hold on, though. Here's what Lawrence is talking about. Okay.
God bless Zemeckis.
The idea is the same thing
Yeah.
with all the other little tidbits that they give us, you know, in the universal law of free will rule book that says we have to get your consent. And so in order to get your consent, we have to tell you what we're doing. And if you're too stupid to figure it out, well, the law of the jungle applies. And so, you know, too bad. But that doesn't mean we have to just tell you what we're doing. So we write it in books and movies and television shows, and we give you enough of it to where, you know, you go, but not enough of it, or we make a little weird twist at the end, much like they do on the news all the time. Okay. And so it's up to you to figure it out. But we're telling you by virtue of these representations that we're putting out there.
Predictive programming.
But limited hangout predictive programming will only give you the limited amount that you can figure out on this particular episode. And then
stay tuned for next week.
Well, those things that you haven't figured out yet, even remotely, we can still hide because you know, we're that far ahead of you.
They don't want you to think it's remotely possible, do they? You know, they want you to think, you know, you've got to travel in a spacecraft at, you know, millions of miles an hour to be able to do it, when it could be rather simple. And if you know that guy, what's his name? The guy who did the water, Victor Schauberger. Well, he's
that's a
guy,
difficult
really,
name. Yeah,
he's the guy who's behind the UFOs. You know, his scientific knowledge, because he was taking over. He had to go and work for the Germans, and maybe they've had, you know, since 1930s, 1940s. If you've got a flying saucer type machine, then maybe you can travel at much faster speeds and go, you know, whiz, you know, even deeper into the past and find stuff out, because, you know, these people are always one step ahead of us, and the only way they could possibly be that far ahead of us is because they've been into the future. Maybe all these mobile phones and all this technology we've got is from the future.
Lawrence.
They've whizzed into the future, brought it back, and rebuilt it.
Oh, Lawrence, I'm dying to ask you the question. What about the Mandela effect and predictive programming has been left out? What is missing from the history? What should we have known about back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, even the early 2001, 2, 3? What should? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Can either of you think of something that has been left out of the predictive programming?
I'm sure you're going to tell us, John.
Well, I'm going to tell you a short story, quick, just to bring you up to speed.
John,
when I was a kid,
is it me buffering, Lawrence? Is he buffering? Who's doing it?
No, John's not buffering on my end.
I think it's you, Lori. You're sort of choppy when you talk sometimes.
Yeah, you're buffering a bit, Laurie. Yeah.
Lawrence.
Yeah.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Okay.
Let John tell his story. I can hear it here, so the viewers should be able to hear it.
Go ahead.
John?
Hi, bye, Frozen.
You carry on, John. We want to hear your story.
When I was a kid.
Sorry, those listening. We'll get this figured out. I'm hearing buffering. Lawrence is not. John, it's all kind of messed up for me, and I'm the one broadcasting, so it must be from my end.
No. All right, well, I'll try and make it quick. When I was a kid, I used to go to bookstores. I used to curl up in the back of bookstores when I was a kid, let's say 12, you know, like a tween. And I'd be back in the occult section So there's a lot of things that I saw in the occult section, like the Witch's Black Magic Handbook, which I didn't purchase, but a friend of mine did. A book about palmistry, which I purchased, and then there was a book about the Star Children. I don't know, Lori, if you recall this old book. I don't know who. Oh, she's gone. Anyway. There was something in this book about the Star Children, I believe. It was a guy who talked about meeting somebody from the future or an alien or something. And he said that this person took out of his pocket a flat crystal. And he showed this crystal to this gentleman, and he said, when I saw it, when he showed it to me, he showed me how he could see anything through this crystal, just a little flat crystal sitting in his hand. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And the only other time I think I've seen this is in that old Charlie Chaplin movie with the guy who looks like he's talking to a Motorola cell phone from like the 1920s. Now, what am I getting at? The iPhone. The iPhone is missing from predictive programming. The iPhone came out of nowhere. There were no movies that showed an iPhone, a block smartphone. There were no movies that got us ready for the iPhone and its technology. There was nothing in our history that got us ready predictively for the iPhone. It was something that just, perhaps maybe out of, I don't know, Steve Jobs, NSA, DARPA secrecy, that it was perfectly held, but that is the one thing that is missing. Everything else has been shown. Everything else is we've seen everything, all sorts of technology, military, time travel, futuristic, even from the science fiction things. But nobody got the iPhone. Nobody.
Yeah, it wasn't even in Star Trek, was it? They had
That's correct.
it'd flip open, and it was just like a little grill where the sound came out, but there was no picture of, Lieutenant
Correct.
on back on the starship. So
why is it missing? Why
because
is
they
it
didn't
missing
know-
from our predictive programming?
that's that technology, in the 1970s.
Certainly
they hadn't
someone
got
could
it yet.
dream that up.
Yeah,
Steve Jobs, whenever Steve Jobs dreamt it up, I don't know when he dreamt it up, but I know he talked to George Lucas, and George Lucas never put anything in, even in Star Wars.
yeah.
So I don't know if anyone has an answer out there for me, but I've been thinking about it a long time, and we've seen everything come along in every movie, every shape or form, everything. But that's the one thing that just blindsided everybody. That's it. That's all I got. Good night. Good night,
Yeah.
everybody.
But I'll tell you an experiment. Well, if we had two fast planes between us that did 2,000 and odd miles an hour.
Oh, then we'd be having pints right now, Lawrence.
John, right, you're in your fast jet, John. I'm in mine. All right. You're going to fly east and I'm going to fly west. Yeah. And we're both going to fly enough time to get to the next sun. Right. So we should both be next to each other, but we won't because we'll be on different Earths. You'd be going east, I'd be going west. We'd both be under the sun. We won't be able to talk to each other, but we could log our coordinates, log longitude and latitude, but you wouldn't be there because you'd be in different parts of the wallpaper. You'd be going that way down the wallpaper, and I'd be going that way. We'd both be on the same continent at the same coordinates, but you wouldn't be near me, anywhere near, because you'd be, 4 or 5 Earths away, going in the opposite direction. So that's an experiment to prove that it would be a continuous. And maybe they've probably done that experiment because that's what I'd do,
Well, let me jump in here for a second. Am I still buffering?
No.
Okay. Let me jump in here for a second and talk about the secret space program that everybody seems to be, woke to, but nobody seems to actually know what the secret space program is, and that is where they're funneling all the money. So, and giving us CGI cartoons for the actual bogus space program.
Maybe it's a
So,
different space.
well, what is this secret space program? And I mean, I've literally have had people send me messages that say, you know, you just don't know. You don't know what you're talking about. There is a secret space program, and it's like, well, then give me something. Be a whistleblower. Tell me what it is, because until I can see it, touch it, feel it, or have anybody other than a conspiracy theory type, here you go, the secret space program exists. Okay. Then I, you know, I'm flying blind here. And so, is the secret space program actually about time travel? Is it about portals and getting out of this layer level of construct? Is it going someplace else in the giant construct computer machine? You know, I mean, I have a million questions. I can do that for like, you know, hours, but there's no information. Okay. And so of course you have to throw UFOs into the mix. Right about the same time, you know, they start talking about UFOs was when all of this technology started going, you know, full steam ahead. All of these rapid movements in the inventions of technology. And, you know, don't you find it curious that if we've been here for thousands of years, that it, like, we spent 9/10 of it or 99% of it with clubs and fire and stuff like that, and then suddenly it's like the iPhone. Hello. You know, you don't advance that quickly exponentially. It's just like we were talking about last time, Lawrence, with the whole population numbers. You know, you threw out, oh, there was like 8 million people, or, you know, whatever in 19 whatever 20 18 something, and then it went exploded into, oh, now we're, you know, 8 billion. And yet at the same time, you can't show that growth. And I don't know what the equation's called, or the geometry or the algebra or whatever to describe, you know, the extrapolation comparison from this many years to this many years, and there were that many people. And even if we only started with 2, you know, you only grew this fast, and then boom, baby, even though you've had mega deaths and wars and genocides and pandemics, and, you know, you can just go on and on, of all the lower birth rates and population controls and countries and so on. Okay. So when you start adding all these things up and then trying to throw time in there and all that, that's, I mean, those are the kinds of places where I just go, and the brakes go on, and I go, well, that describes a construct. And then you start thinking about something else, and well, that describes a construct. And so it's no wonder this is where I am right now. And I mean, I actually look at all of our flat earth research leading up to Pac-Man as one big giant snore at this point. Even though, I mean, it's, a big snore. I mean, it's like, it's so 5 minutes ago. And people that are still there, you know, and all these people all the time I see in threads and places, you know, on Facebook, well, flat earth has come to a standstill. Nobody's doing any new research. Nobody's coming up with any models or maps or anything. It's like, really? Why do you think that is?
Well, technically,
Ask
didn't the
yourself,
flat Earth
people.
always stand still anyway?
No. People thought they were learning all this new stuff when all they were really doing was actually starting to observe, for a change, the real world out there. Okay. They went from indoctrination education to actually trying to, play scientist a little bit. And so all of this was new and wonderful, like you're 3 years old again, you know? And then once you know, investigate your room and then your house and then your neighborhood and then your town and then, you know, that's pretty much as far as you can go unless you're, you know,
I got a question for you.
world
How
traveler.
do you research something that's infinite in all directions?
You can't. That's the
Right.
whole point. You can't make a model. You can't make a model. You can't make a map because the map is always moving because it's always now. Okay. I mean, every time somebody builds a new building, every time somebody builds a new bridge or a new road, it's all a new map and it's all now. And people are investigating and learning about different places. They even say there's no place left hardly anywhere on land on the earth that hasn't been at least somewhat investigated. Okay. Even the depths of, because now we got drones and shit flying all over everywhere. You can see everything. You can go anywhere, right? With a drone. But not the depths of the sea. That's all had that, you know, that's like pretty mapless. I mean, so what I'm getting to is I'm not making any more fun of anybody else than I'm making fun of my own self because I was on the same trail. Okay. I did the same thing. I found myself staring at the moon going, well, wait a minute. If the sun is supposed to be lighting this one side of the moon, well, of course, you know, it stands to reason the lit side is always on the western side of the moon. So it could be looked at that way, that the sun's doing that. But damn, when the moon is only half full, that's such a straight line right down the side, you know, right down that orb that it couldn't possibly, the shadows don't do that. They don't go like that.
Yes,
so then
correct.
Okay, so stuff like that. All right, so now that observation, that's not really research. People get that.
Lori, you are buffering.
You're buffering, Laurie.
And so that's observation. It's what you do with those observations, how you extrapolate those observations that matter. That's research. Okay. So now I've done all those. I've watched everybody else do all these observations. I paid attention to the things that people got onto, and okay, they're talking about, see what they're, and yet here we are nearly 4 years later since flat earth movement started. And you could go up to most flat earthers and they nonstop, without a doubt, repeat the same dogma that I already heard 3.5 years ago, and they haven't moved an inch off of it. Not an inch, not a foot.
I'm still linked into countless flat earth channels. I subscribed to a load about a few months back just to observe what's going on there, and they're still going through the sort of same process that we went through 4 years ago, and talking the same old shit and having the same old arguments. Well, explain gravity to me then, and all this stuff, and I'm having the same old arguments that just go round in a big circle. You know, it's like,
well, what happens when you look them square in the face and you go like this? The concept of gravity is in the construct. That's part of the design of the concept. Oh no, it's what do you call it? Density and what's the other one? Buoyancy. No, it's density and buoyancy. Yeah, exactly. That's too.
It's either right? Density and you know what? When it comes down to flat Earth and gravity, it's always like either density and buoyancy or something, or God and the devil, you know, or Jesus and the Bible. It's interesting. And you can go around in circles of interpretation.
Right. Okay. Can I ask you a question, John?
On everything.
I want to ask,
right.
I'm going to just go off at a little tangent here because it's, well, I find it interesting anyway. So, John Lloyd.
Hey, you guys. Can I interrupt for a second? Hello.
You're
Stop for a
buffering.
second. I am getting nothing but buffering. And so am I buffering?
Yes.
Yes, buffering.
All right.
big time.
I'm afraid that our broadcast is going to be buffering. So I'm going to take a weird chance here, and I'm going to drop out of this and come back. Can you hear? Did you hear what I just said?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. If I don't come back, I don't know what else to say, but the broadcast may stop for just a second. I know. I'm going to do it anyway. Everybody stand by.
Okay.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes.
Oops.
Lawrence, how long have you been playing guitar?
How long?
Oh, really? Well, that's pretty good. You have pretty good fingering so far. Do you have a lot of calluses yet?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. You've been practicing. So one thing I tried playing guitar and I just couldn't handle it. I tried playing bass guitar and I loved it. It was much easier. But the fingers. Do you have an Oh, there she is.
Name that tune. Name that tune. Name that tune. Just the first bit. That's how it starts off. Just those two couple of chords.
I'm horrible. I can't figure it out.
I don't have it, Lawrence.
It's familiar.
Sorry.
Okay, it's not working. So tell us what it is. We have podcasters listening.
It's Albatross.
Okay. No,
Well, it's mine.
never in a million years would I've gotten that one. Okay.
Brilliant.
Anyway, so I was going to ask you a question. All right. So I want you and Laurie to both imagine that you both wake up one day and it's just you on this earth. There's nobody else, but you've got enhanced powers. You can, you have the power of creation. You can create new life forms, can do anything you like. So what are you going to do? Oh, here's another question. You're all by yourself. No other humans about. All the creatures are there, and the birds and the bees and the elephants and the horses and the dogs and the cats. But you're all on your jacksie. There's no human company. Are you going to get lonely? Are you going to get lonely?
I can answer unequivocally, not a chance. I have never been lonely, lonesome.
On your own, no one to talk to.
Never been lonely or lonesome a day in my entire life.
And I think the sheer thought of, or the act of survival would eliminate any thought of loneliness. You'd be too tired.
All right, well, and then you don't age anymore. So you've been around for a million years. The sun has, done a million years worth of circuits, whatever it's going to do. And, it's not. You're okay. Are you going to get a little bit bored? Are you going to create some humans in your likeness?
If that's possible.
Yeah. Would you? Yeah.
Yeah, but I'd put them on the other side of the world.
Yeah, you would.
Yeah, I'd separate everybody just to get used to loneliness, and then have to hopefully meet up.
Because that's always the bit that I can't get the head around me. Because people say there isn't time, but if you took time, you couldn't even have a discussion without time, because everything that you say relates to time. So our Creator, has been around for a long time, but for an infinite time. That's what the Bible people say. God has been around infinitely. So there was never a time when God didn't exist. And that's what I have a job getting my head around, because, there was always a time before that. And, if I had one question to ask God or our Creator, whoever that may be, God of the Bible, God, what is your earliest recollection, or who made you? I mean, what would you ask God? What question? One question. Why would you ask him?
Well, I don't know, but like, what if there's no creator? There's just creation.
Well, let's assume that there was somebody
Oh, okay.
created us.
Oh,
What would the
John.
what would your
I know. I'm such a party
You
pooper.
know
Nobody
what?
wants to
Sometimes-
invite me to the party.
Come on, what are you going to ask? Laurie, what are you going to do? You've got an audience with God, and you're going to, it says, Laurie, I'm a bit busy, I've got all this earth to look after. And you can have any question you like, and I'll tell you the truth. In your terms, in your civilization, what are you going to ask God?
What's your middle name?
That's one of those questions that I would have to say, I'm going to have to take that question under advisement, because if you said only one question, and that right there, I mean, I have a million. So how would I pick
sarcastic questions.
How would I pick just one?
I got to get through them.
Well, have a think about it.
Well, if God created me, then God already knows I'm sarcastic because it was part of my programming, right?
So then he already knows what your question
I'm sure
is.
he finds it, humorous, right?
Why is he a he? Why is he always got to be a he?
Because we live in a matriarchal society. That's why. He is a them. He is actually a them.
What's funny is
That's why they. That's
on
what,
Earth, women are the
Trinity.
only thing that can create life.
Now?
Well, I'm saying men are part of the process, but women are the only things that actually give birth and create something. Another life. Females.
Not really, because you can't create.
It's the whole
You have
creation.
to. You have to fertilize the egg. I mean, it's simple.
Well,
you have to fertilize the egg.
Well, sometimes the egg gets eaten.
Okay. So, did we
ask
answer
God?
John's questions?
Yes. No.
Okay.
Time?
So
no.
Okay. So time in a bottle. Look at all of the things that have been talked about time forever, right?
I'd ask God. I'd say, God, are you subject to time? Is there, how does time work where you are? Do you have a son? Is there a time? And then if he said there was, then I would say,
no. You only got one question. You're done. Okay. You're done. All right. But that's already known. That answer to that question is already known. If you have read the book.
Yeah. Wouldn't God be like, haven't you read my book?
Do you know what Bible actually means?
Read your
John?
Bibles.
Do you know what the word Bible means?
I don't know. I know bibliotech means library.
Bible just simply means book.
Oh, okay.
That's all it is. It's a book.
It's kind of like esoteric just means hidden.
Well, I mean, that's the root of the word.
Yeah.
I mean, it just means book.
Actually, the root
People
of the
call
word
it
is
the Holy Bible.
Actually, the root of the word is bib.
Now that defines it as a holy book. Okay, but now let's go back. I just feel like, am I buffering?
Yes.
I'm okay right now?
Not too bad.
At this moment. Okay,
A
thank
little
you. Really?
I'll mute.
All right, so I think what we should do is, I think if you guys are up for it, I think we should take a break. Let me clean some crap out of my computer that's probably causing this slowness, and meet up again in about a half an hour. Are you interested in that?
Yeah.
Because I have some more things I want to talk about.
John?
Are you good with that, John? You're muted.
You're muted, John.
Thank you. Yeah, let's talk about graphics when we return.
Okay, that sounds great.
Cool.
All right, I'll send you guys a new link because I'm going to stop this broadcast.
Bye.
We'll be
All
back.
right, bye everybody.
Bye-bye.
Look for part next. I don't even know what to call it. Okay, bye guys.
Okay.